over to Sydney. Sydney, thank you so much for being
Hi.
here.
Hi. Happy to be here too. I'm distracted because I see my name also in the room and I'm like, who else is Sydney Ingberg today? But well, yeah, hi to both of us, I guess. But I'm so excited to be here and kind of putting on this, we'll call it like a mini workshop on wellness without numbers. But I guess a little bit about me to get us started. If you do not know me already, I am a registered dietitian and certified personal trainer here in Atlanta. Um, my a little bit about my background. After finishing my master's program, I started working in eating disorder treatment center at the inpatient and residential level of care, and then kind of bounced around doing PHP and IOP for about 3 years, kind of on the treatment side of things. And though my work there was really impactful, I found myself kind of craving a desire to go deeper with my clients into this anti-diet world that, the time frame that you're in treatment doesn't really allow for. So that is when I crossed paths with Whole Self Nutrition and Caroline at Whole Self Nutrition, which is a weight inclusive and non-diet practice focused on helping people heal their relationships with food, body, and movement. And the last 3 years have been an absolute dream. The rest is history, right? So yeah, I'm so excited to be here doing this collaboration with Clarity and talking about the things that I love and feel passionately about. So let's begin. But before we dive in, I am going to give everybody just a few seconds to get situated. We're going to have a couple of things that we need. Um, I guess maybe not need, but might benefit from today if you want to grab a journal or a piece of paper and a pen, something to write something down. We are going to be doing a little bit of reflection throughout today's webinar. So, just anything that you could use to write down intentions or thoughts that come up. But as you settle back down, maybe take a deep breath in through your nose, unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, wiggle into your seat a little bit, take a sip of water, grab a snack, whatever you need to feel a little bit more grounded and just to arrive. And ask yourself, what do I want to get out of this today? What drew me to this today? Why did I show up? Maybe it's more peace with food, less guilt around workouts, or maybe you just ended up here out of curiosity. But this kind of grounding practice and intention setting is going to be a theme today. So, whatever you need to do a quick body scan, check in, and reconnect. So, today we are going to be talking about what does nourishment really mean? We tend to think of nourishment as just food, whether it be macros or calories or nutrient density or fiber or protein. Protein's everywhere these days, but nourishment is a lot bigger than that. Nourishment is how we care for ourselves as whole humans. So it's the food we eat, yes, but it's also our relationship with rest, with joy, with movement, and the people around us. And diet culture also has a tendency to reduce health to numbers, statistics, whether it's steps, macros, scale, or the number on a size of clothing. But real health doesn't come from those things. It comes from balance and compassion, not from control. So, we are going to do a brief introduction into intuitive eating. I think most people that I talk with, as I explain to my dietitian, the intro goes like, oh, will you make me a meal plan or you're gonna judge what I have to eat? And I have to backtrack a little bit. I'm not that type of dietitian. Okay, that's not the type of dietitian we are around here. I do intuitive eating. Have you heard of that? And the answer is always, yes, I've heard of that. But show of hands, maybe in the chat. I don't know if you can show hands in the chat. Um, who has had somebody tell them that they can't intuitively eat because if they intuitively ate, they would eat XYZ or they'd eat X amount or they'd eat all day long. I've heard it. I see it all over Instagram and TikTok of like, this is why I'm not an intuitive eating person. And it's because a lot of people have this belief that intuitive eating is eating whatever you want whenever you want, or eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. And though those are parts of intuitive eating, it, that's not the whole picture. Intuitive eating is really about learning how to respond to your body with curiosity instead of judgment. So, intuitive eating was developed by two registered dietitians, which I love. Clearly, we love dietitians out in the world doing things. But Evelyn Trivoli and Elise Resk back in 1995, they were out here doing that anti-diet work in the peak of the 90s, which go girls. But they wanted to offer an evidence-based alternative to this endless diet cycle because the decades of research, even at that point in time, okay, so 1995, the research was still showing that regardless of what diet you're doing, 95% of diets fail in the long term. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second because that is a huge statistic. 95% of diets fail in the long term. And most people who participate in dieting regain the weight within 2 to 5 years, often more weight than they initially lost. Has anybody seen the new show that just came out on The Biggest Loser? The people on The Biggest Loser coming back out and being like, hey, this is what happened to us. Insane, right? What has been like kind of coming to the surface and people speaking out about their experience of this kind of like forced and glamorized weight loss. But I think that stories like that oftentimes get pushed to the wayside, right? Because it's not as glamorous as what was initially put out there on Biggest Loser. The kind of like competitive and celebratory part of dieting that kind of drags people in and makes people want to participate. But the research for decades now has been showing us that it doesn't work. It doesn't last. It doesn't improve health. So, our two lovely dietitian girlies, they went out there and they created a self-care framework that is not a weight loss plan. Intuitive eating is designed to help you rebuild body trust, the ability to recognize and respond to your body's hunger, your fullness, and satisfaction, rather than relying on external factors, rules, tracking apps, schedules, etc. It is built on 10 principles that are all designed to help you connect and step away from chronic dieting and reconnect with your body's natural wisdom. Now, this is pop quiz time because I also believe in pop quizzes. If you know one or more than one of any of the principles of intuitive eating, throw them in the chat. I want to see if we can collect all 10, like a Pokemon. Oh, come on. I know you guys can do better than I know there's people in the crowd here that can come up with more than zero. Okay, okay. Joyful fueling, eating what you enjoy. Okay, I'll take it. We'll call that making peace with food. We can call it. Yeah, respecting your fullness. Okay. See, you guys know what's up. Um, there is all 10. They're labeled 1 through 10. I always remind my clients that learning intuitive eating is not going through them in the order 1 through 10. A lot of times that means focusing in on one principle and bopping around as feels needed, right? But they range everywhere from gentle nutrition to feeling your fullness to respecting your hunger. They go on and on. But there are a few core ones that I put on here today that I think really embody like kind of the heart of what intuitive eating is, and that is ditching the diet rules. It means leaving behind this rigidity and outside plans, if you will, tuning into your hunger and fullness, making peace with food, respecting your body, and focusing on satisfaction and self-care. And what I really love about intuitive eating is when we stop micromanaging our food, we actually end up making choices that feel better, physically and mentally. And when you've practiced it, you start to realize that. Uh-huh. Yes, that one did always kind of feel diety. And I think that's really the nuance of intuitive eating. That like if you really break down intuitive eating and you only read it in like segments and you don't kind of do that zoom out, a lot of it can feel that way. I think the what is the one on exercise? The one on exercise, if you just read the chapters, can feel that way too, of like trying to fit in movement here, fit in movement there, and it can feel kind of compulsive or obligatory. But I think that is also what I love about intuitive eating is that you do kind of have to take it with this like framework that that's not the intention, right? That the intention is like bodily respect. Um, but I also really, really love the framework of intuitive eating because there's lots of data on it. It is a well researched. And I was going to say 20 years, but I realized 1995 was 30 years ago. And that makes me feel way old. So, there's 30 years of data that shows us the efficacy of this framework of eating. And obviously, there's set criteria when they put it out into research. But the research shows that intuitive eating improves body image, it improves self-esteem, it supports stable weight and metabolic health, it lowers disordered eating behaviors, and it increases overall satisfaction with life and overall well-being. And that to me is really, really profound because no other diets out there are talking about those sorts of benefits long term. And I cannot remember exactly which study it is, but there's a study out there that looked at intuitive eaters, I think like 20 years retroactively, right? And so when you start like getting into the nutrition science of dieting, most diets stop being researched after 6 months to a year to maybe 3 years. And when you look at it long term, there's a reason they stop researching it. The results don't hold up that long, right? So when we talk about intuitive eating being anti-diet, it is not about ignoring health and nutrition. That is not the takeaway. It's about breaking free from this binge restrict cycle and learning sustainable habits that actually support metabolic, emotional, and physical well-being. And the great thing is once we have a more trusting relationship with food, we can start looking at movement in the same way. It's not as punishment or compensatory, but as another way to really connect with our bodies. So that brings us to fitness without fixation. And if you have ever spoken to me before, or have been my client, or have met me in a professional or personal setting, you will know that movement is one of my favorite things to talk about because I believe it is really, really important. But mostly because it can either connect us to our bodies or it can completely disconnect us. And I think if you are coming from an eating disorder history, there's a good chance that you've either experienced one or both of those feelings. So when we think of movement through this kind of like lens of diet culture, it is often about control. Calories burned, steps tracked, progress photos, before and afters, getting stronger, building a booty, whatever is the new trending phase. But movement can be so much more when we shift the focus from output to experience. And that's really what joyful movement is about. It's about loving the movement itself while you're in it for either the connection, for the stress relief, or you fill in the blank of what that joyful movement really feels like, but it's always about presence. So my next little thing that I'm going to have you guys write down is I want you to ask yourself before your next movement, does this movement bring me energy or does this bring me exhaustion? Am I moving from joy or am I moving from guilt? Am I having fun or am I supposed to be here? All right, a couple ways that you can check in with kind of our intention of being there. And I also like to point out that joyful movement doesn't just have to be exercise. Like it does not have to be going to the gym or going on a walk. Joyful movement can be dancing in your kitchen. Again, if you've ever worked with me or had an emotional moment with me, there's a good chance I told you you probably needed a 30-second dance party, and I meant it, right? Because joyful movement doesn't have to be programmed exercise. It can be gardening, it can be doing housework, it can be going on a walk with a friend or with your dog, or going to a class at Clarity, right? I still need to make it into Alex's class because dance fitness is also like the most fun thing in the whole world. I love it. Um, but joyful movement is really about taking the pressure away from movement. This idea that we need to earn food or sculpt something or, progress in some way to making it fun again, right? And in turn, making it sustainable again. So, my next slide, where did it go? Go. Okay. Oh, wait. I'm going back because I wanted to ask another question. That's what I was forgetting. Okay, so in our journal prompts, here's what I want you to write down, and you guys are more than welcome to share in the chat if you would like, or you can keep it to yourself. But I want everyone to think about a time where either movement felt free or it felt fun. This can be from recent. Or if that feels a little bit far off, think about a time when you were as a kid. A form of movement that you used to love doing that maybe you haven't engaged in a minute. And I just want you to kind of bring up that memory. Who was there? What were you doing? What did it sound like? What time of day was it? Just kind of forming that memory. And if you'd like to put that moment in the chat, you can just briefly type it in. Feel free to add it down in there. For some reason, one moment that always comes up to me is like jungle gym, right? Like jungle gym monkey bars as a kid. Like that was fun, okay? It was fun because you were taking a break from school, you were hanging out with your friends, you were just wiggling around. Dancing at 57. Okay, what's 57th?
So there's a little bar next to the Peachtree DeKalb Airport, and you can like watch the planes land and take off, and they have like a whole dance floor and food and a bar, and it's like probably geared toward people in the range of like 60 to 70 years old, but like every once in a while, it's just such a great time. So we love to go there and dance and play and sing. It's so fun.
Okay. Put that on a list to send to me later because I'm always down for a good place to dance and
I
sing.
got you. It's a great time.
Okay. But as we reflect, again, I want you to notice what made it fun, what made it joyful, and how has that maybe differed from the way that you've moved recently? Is there something that you could do to bring some of that energy back? Or is there something you can do to recreate that? Maybe with my jungle gym memory, I did recently come across a place in Atlanta that is kind of like an adult outdoor boot camp area, but they have like ropes and obstacle courses to climb. Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh, it essentially was like boot camp, but it looked so much fun. I imagine it's also pretty hard, but again, doing something that like is a little bit silly might be challenging, but the intention is just to move your body. Okay, so why weight is not the best marker of health. We have been taught for decades, and unfortunately, I still hear it in many of the medical settings that I have entered to this day, even in a lot of my teachings as a dietitian, right? Like in my own schooling, anti-diet things were not the foundation of what I was taught. And keep that in mind when you talk to other healthcare professionals too, is that this information, like things like intuitive eating and that research, is not things that I learned in school. It was all things that came from continuing education and my own research after being credentialed. But our world still believes that weight equals health. But the science doesn't show that, right? Like the data does not back that statement up. The research actually shows that behaviors, not body size, are what influence long-term health outcomes. So what that means, for example, is someone in a larger body who eats balanced meals and moves regularly and manages their stress and gets good sleep and has good health, like healthy relationships, often has better health markers than someone in a smaller body who chronically diets and overexercises. And I think we really need to talk about that more and also remind ourselves that because a lot of the messaging that we're still getting, unfortunately, from our outside sources is telling us that somehow our body size is the main impactor of our health. And it's just not true. Did it change screen? Okay. So weight is just one data point. It is not the whole picture. And with this graphic, I really wanted to point out that our at the center of our health, or at the center is our health, and on the outside are all these other things that make up our health. If anybody's familiar with the 8 areas of wellness, I know this is not 8, this is 4, but I guess second impromptu pop quiz, does anybody know the other areas of the 8 areas of wellness? Spiritual, financial, yeah, yeah. Environmental. That's the other one that's on there that I don't think we have on there. But again, there's all these different things that make up our health. Weight is just one data point. It is not the whole picture. Things like cholesterol, blood pressure, muscle mass, hydration, mental well-being, those things tell us a lot more about somebody's health status than a number on a scale. And then we can talk about the whole issue of weight cycling, which, if you're not familiar, is that repeated loss and regain that we were talking about earlier that comes from chronic dieting and the metabolic impacts of that, right? That cycle increases inflammation, it increases insulin resistance and cardiovascular risk. And intuitive eating and a weight neutral approach to nutrition, right? Nutrition and movement, it's helping people stabilize both physically and emotionally by focusing on the behaviors instead of one data point, weight, as a marker of success. So I really like, I think it's maybe on the next slide. I won't spoil. Oh, maybe I will. Nope, I'm going to spoil it. Okay. There's a quote that I saw online and I cannot remember who it was from, but it said, if weight was a perfect indicator of health, we wouldn't see people of all sizes both thriving and struggling. And I think that statement's really profound, right? Because we see that. And sometimes it's really hard to conceptualize how we can like separate out health status from body size. But we have to kind of do that heavy lifting on the back end. And again, find some other things that we can focus on as our markers for success because goals also are not the enemy. And that's also kind of a thing that gets mixed up in here is that when we talk about letting go of weight or of a fitness level or of a body size as a goal, people are like, okay, well, then I just don't care about it. And that's also not the point, right? Instead, it's really shifting into things that do matter. So when we remove weight as the focus, we create more room for meaningful goals that are aligned with our values. And that's going to vary from person to person. But it does take a lot of reflection and kind of like maybe self-criticism a little bit to say, like, why am I holding on to this? Yeah. So instead of, I want to lose 10 pounds, what could be a replacement that might be a little bit more values aligned? Because I do think it's important to say, why would losing 10 pounds feel important to me? What is the deeper reason between why someone would want to lose 10 pounds? Oftentimes, it comes down to what I actually want is confidence, or what I actually want is energy, or freedom, or physical ability, right? 4 things that actually have nothing to do with a number on a scale. Yeah. So then reframing that goal and setting it as something that is actually aligned with the outcome, that's what we really want to focus on. So if you have one in mind of a goal that you can set, or maybe a reframe goal to one of these here, feel free to pop it in the text. But instead of maybe I want to lose 10 pounds, maybe I want to have consistent energy all day. Also, I'm gonna be so transparent that coming up with these bad goals was so hard for my brain. I was I was struggling so hard to be like, I my next one I put on there, I want to get rid of my gut, which sounds just like a cartoon character in my brain. I don't know why. But it's because it's such like a misaligned goal with what we're talking about here. It's crazy. So if they sound cheesy, it's because they are, and I was trying my best. But instead of I want to get rid of my gut, I want to improve my digestion. Instead of I want to slim down before XYZ, maybe I want to feel confident at the gym or wherever, whatever you're planning for. I ate XYZ today, so I need to fill in the compensatory blank. I want to honor my hunger without guilt, right? So we can kind of shift and take these goals that are maybe rooted in something that is not aligned with our real values. It's a little bit more superficial and replace it with something that we actually care about. Okay, so intentions versus outcomes. We're going to do a short little reflection together. I hope you all have your paper. I'm pretending like I can see you guys getting out your paper and pens. Um, but we are going to do a little bit of grounding exercise. So I just want to say everybody can kind of take this as they feel comfortable. If you are comfortable with breath work and grounding, by all means, settle in. If not, feel free to keep your eyes open and just hang out. Um, but if you are comfortable, go ahead and take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. You can close your eyes or lower your gaze, maybe find something to rest your eyes on. And just notice how your body feels right now. No judgment, just awareness. And reflect. Think about the last time that you moved your body. That could be a walk or a workout or dancing, maybe stretching. And ask yourself, what was my goal in that moment? How did I show up there? Was I focused on an outcome or an intention? Where was my headspace? And if you realize it was outcome focused, that is totally okay, right? We agreed when we were showing up here that this is awareness, not judgment. But I want you to take a moment and imagine setting an intention before engaging in that same movement. Maybe ask yourself, what do I want to feel during or after this movement? What do I need from my body today? And let a word or a phrase kind of come naturally to the surface. Again, remembering to come back to your breath. Maybe a word like grounded or strong, recharged or peaceful, whatever feels right to you. And just let that word sit there. Maybe taking another breath or two. And when you're comfortable, blinking your eyes open, maybe shifting a little bit and bringing a little bit of movement back into the room. If you feel comfortable sharing, I would love to hear what words came up for you guys. Pain-free. I like that one. I think mine today is just space. You know, when you just feel like your bones need more space. Now imagine finishing movement, and instead of measuring it by how much you did or if you did enough, how would you have answered that question of how do I feel right now? Maybe in that short mindfulness activity, what did you notice about your energy or about your mood? Did it surprise you? Were there things that felt different than that you anticipated them to? And this is how intention setting helps us shift, right? Making that movement from performance to presence. I don't know if you guys realized it, but it took approximately 2 minutes. I think body scans can even be done in as little as 30 seconds, right? That's that short blip of time before you get out of the car and enter a space. That's that short blip of time while you're tying up your shoes, or, I'm constantly chasing down my AirPods from wherever they went. But it's the little moments that really help us shift. And it keeps movement flexible and sustainable, even on the days that you're doing less, or even on the days that you're resting, right? Because it comes down to the intentionality. When we kind of bring it all together, nourishment over numbers really encompasses all of it. But at the center is you, your whole self. Everything that we've talked about, from intuitive eating to movement and intention setting and anti-diet culture and shifting away from weight focused goals, it all feeds into this like big overarching idea that real nourishment supports your whole self. Eating becomes about fueling and enjoying. Movement becomes about a way to connect with strength and energy in your mind and people. Doing movement with people is like my favorite thing on the planet. Rest isn't sustainable. Like health is not sustainable without rest and recovery. And sleep and breaks and downtime are simply non-negotiable. But also compassion. You cannot out diet, you cannot out exercise or out achieve your way into self-acceptance. Kindness towards yourself is essential. And that's also part of nourishment. So before we wrap up, I would love to take one last moment. And if you have your paper out, write down one insight, one phrase, one word, or one mindset shift that kind of stood out to you today. One small practical thing that you can take away to honor your body this week. Again, this is not like a big goal setting, no extra things to tack onto a to-do list. This should be something kind and approachable and also fun. It should be something to look forward to doing.